Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Nehemiah chapter 5. We're going to be looking at verses 14 to 19 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, in verses 14 to 19, we see Nehemiah's example of unselfishness. So let's turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. We're going to read verses 17 and 18. And it says here in verse 17, it says, Paul here is saying to the Corinthians, did I make a gain of you by any of them whom I sent unto you? I desired Titus, and with him I sent a brother. Did Titus make a gain of you? Walked we not in the same spirit? Walked we not in the same steps? So here Paul is saying, I sent people unto you, but we were honest and true. And the people that I sent to you, they didn't take gain from you. They didn't take advantage of you. And now this is what Nehemiah is going to say. It is sometimes difficult to not take advantage of people, especially when they are nice people or vulnerable, such as the elderly who can't get around much and who depend on other people to get help. The temptation is sometimes too strong for some Christians. An extra $10 here, $20 there. Maybe they reward themselves for hard work and they buy a new shirt, a new dress, new pair of pants with that extra money that they got from that person that they took advantage of. God is holy and righteous, and he deals with people based upon his holiness and his righteousness. Remember, God hates sin, and God really hates it when the poor and the widows and the elderly and the fatherless are taken advantage of. You can read throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. One thing you need to know: God is for the elderly, the orphans, the widows. God is for them. He's looking out after them. So whatever you do, you treat them nice. Don't take advantage of them. Because God is what doesn't mean they're automatically saved. No, it means that God is watching out over the poor people, the helpless people. God's eye is on them. Now, in these last 6 verses of chapter 5, Nehemiah tells us that he would not take the food that was allowed to him because of being the governor, even though he had a right to take it. So let's read verses 14 down to verse 18. And it says here, moreover, from the time that I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year, even unto the 32nd year of Artaxerxes the king, that is 12 years, I and my brethren, we have not eaten the bread of the governor. But the former governors that had been here before me were chargeable unto the people. I mean, Nehemiah is saying, I could have taken it, but I didn't. I had a right to. But the governors that were before me, they took the provisions from the people, and had taken of them bread and wine, besides 40 shekels of silver. Yea, even their servants bear rule over the people. But I did not do so. Why? Why did Nehemiah not do it? Because of the fear of God. This is what he says in verse 15. Because of the fear of God. Yea, also I continued in the work of this wall, neither bought we any land, and all my servants were gathered thither unto the work. Moreover, there were at my table, listen to this, at my table there were 150 of the Jews and of the Jews and rulers, beside those that came unto us from among the heathen that were about us. Now that which was prepared for me daily was 1 ox and 6 choice sheep. Also fowls were prepared for me, and once in 10 days store of all sorts of wine. Yet for all, listen to this, for all of this required not I the bread of the governor. That means he says, I didn't require from the people that you give me my due for being governor. Because why? Because the bondage was heavy upon these people, and it was. Think upon me, my God, for good, according to all that I have done for this people. So it would have been too much of a burden on the people. Nehemiah, in verse 18, Nehemiah knew that the hard work that the people were doing to build the wall, and the last thing that they needed is to prepare food for him and these people. They're working hard on this wall to get it built up. And the last thing they need is to be, get supper ready for him and 150 other people. But the reason why Nehemiah did not do it, again, verse 15, was because of the fear of the Lord. Nehemiah knew that God was watching every move and every decision that he made. He wanted God to be pleased with his decisions and his motives. And it's the same with us. Listen, to what extent are we concerned with what God thinks about our decisions and our motive? Do we care? Do we care what God thinks about our decisions and our motives for those decisions? The way some people live, even Christians, shows that they don't give much importance to what God thinks about what they did. There's even Christians out there that don't seem to care what God thinks. Oh, I'm going to do it anyways. I don't care what God thinks. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Our Father, who knows the number of every hair on our head, who counts the steps that we take, who discerns our thoughts from our intents. Our God is interested in every detail of our life. God is watching us every second of the day. You have to understand, God's eye is on us. It's on every person, saved or unsaved. God's eye is on them every single second of the day. God is intricately interested in every detail of our life. Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. God searches our hearts and tries our thoughts. We need to live our lives knowing that the all-seeing eyes of God are upon us. You are being watched by not just your actions, but also your thoughts. God's watching you. But remember, God reads the mind. He knows our thoughts afar off. He's not only watching the actions that we do, he sees our thoughts afar off. Let's seek to live pure lives, holy lives unto God in all that we do. We should have a strong desire in our hearts to live holy unto God, because it's all exposed, like Hebrews 4 verse 12. God, we're all open. Everything we do is open to the eyes of God. And then verses 17 and 18, moreover, there were set at my table 150 Jews and the rulers, beside those that came unto us from among the heathen that were about us. Now that which was prepared, right, was an ox, sheep, all these things. And he says, yet for all of this, I did not require the bread of the governor, because the bondage is heavy on these people. Every day, listen, every day, at Nehemiah's own expense, Nehemiah would have his table open to these people. 150 people would come every single day, and they'd have lunch or dinner with him. You know, sometimes sitting around a dinner table is just what is needed to unify the hearts in obtaining a goal. Nehemiah's goal was unity among the Jews and the rebuilding of the walls for the city's protection. This is what Nehemiah wanted. Nehemiah wanted this wall to be built so that the city would be protected against the enemies. And what one of the ways he helped continue the building of this wall, he gathered people for dinner. For every day, for lunch. Come on, let's have lunch. And they had fellowship, and they talked, and they built this wall. That dinner, all that food there was prepared. It was prepared to help. It was helping to encourage the people to keep building the wall. Right? You know how it is. You know how you feel when you're invited to dinner. You know how it unified dinners and eating dinners together and being invited out. It unifies the heart with people. And so this is what Nehemiah is doing here. Now we're going to get into, next lesson, we're getting into chapter 6. And in chapter 6, we're going to see 3 more attempts by the enemy, 3 more attacks against Nehemiah and the builders of the wall. So this is chapter 6. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.